Mm. Good morning. Actually, this is going to be a very quick scope, and so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully people will be able to watch the replay because, like I said, I'm going to help them get started. It's going to be a quick scope. And so the title of this scope is Be Not Dismayed, God Takes Care of His People. And so I'm just on the scope this morning to encourage those who need encouragement after last night. And if you're a Trump supporter, I'm sorry, this scope is not for you. This is your day. Take a bow, but this is for us non-Trump supporters to encourage each other during this time. For those of us that's almost half the country that woke up this morning to some very disturbing news for us, I just want to encourage you that God has not forgotten you. And even though, of course, we're going to expect a lot of changes, having a Republican president, a Republican Senate, a Republican House of Representatives, but God, regardless of what things look like, God is in control. And we just have to remember that the Bible says for us to pray for our leaderships, we have to pray for our country, and we have to understand that it is God who takes down one and pulls up another. And so just believe that God has a plan and God has a purpose, regardless of what it may look like on the outside. And so part of the scope is saying that God takes care of his people. And so this morning, I just want to remind people that God has a track record of taking care of his people. And God has a track record of even using evil men, evil leaders, to do his purposes on the earth and make sure his people are taken care of. For instance, I love the book of Esther. And the book of Esther, the king that Esther ended up marrying was obviously an evil king. He agreed to annihilate a whole group of people to commit genocide just to have more treasury in his war chest. And so despite the king being a very evil person, God used Esther to turn the king's heart and for him to take care of the very people that he actually sent out the order to destroy. And not only did those people not be destroyed, the Israelites were not destroyed who was living in his kingdom, but they ended up taking everything that their opponents had. So God not only protected the people, but he also blessed the people. And of course, another example of that is when the Israelites were in Egypt. And even though God said many times to an evil Pharaoh to let his people go, and he wouldn't do it, in the end, God showed himself to be God, and the Pharaoh had to let the people go. And again, the people left Egypt with the wealth of Egypt. The very people who oppressed them, they left with wealth. So the very people who oppressed the people, God used those evil people, God used those evil leaders to bless the people. And God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I just believe that despite what things may look like, despite those of almost half the country who feel that we have an evil leader that's coming into power, that God still has the ability and God still has a plan to bless us. And he also has a plan to protect all of those who are oppressed. Anybody who heard even a little bit of the debates or the different things in the presidential election will have to say that Trump said a lot of things that really offended and showed a disdain for women, a disdain for minorities, for blacks, for Hispanics, and other people of color. And I'm sure, I know myself as a woman and a person of color and a black person and others, they woke up this morning to what seemed like a very different America. We thought we were in America that the past 50 years that things had gotten better for women, things had gotten better for minorities. And I'm sure a lot of us have stressed and may feel dismayed about where America is heading, and that for most of America to vote for a president who said sexist things, who made racist remarks, it kind of feels like, oh man, like how we haven't really come as far as I had hoped. And I know I felt like, oh my goodness, I feel like America's going back decades. But God has a track record, not only taking care of his people, God has a track record of taking care of the oppressed. Even the examples I already gave, as far as the Israelites in the book of Esther, and the Israelites who were under Egyptian rule, who were slaves, these people were oppressed. But also, in individual lives, and the Bible shows that God has a track record of taking care of the oppressed. For instance, Hannah. Hannah went and prayed to God because she wasn't able to have a child, and she was actually the first wife, and because most likely because she wasn't able to have a child, her husband actually took a second wife, and she had many kids, and Hannah didn't have any kids, and so it seemed like Hannah's own body was like disfavoring her, but God blessed Hannah anyway. And actually, the woman who had more kids, Penina, she oppressed Hannah. And so, despite Hannah being oppressed by someone who appeared to be more prosperous than her, God showed Hannah favor, and she opened her womb. And also, if you look at Jacob and his two wives, he had Rachel and he had Leah, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. And even though so God saw Leah and saw that Rachel was favored over Leah, and God closed up Rachel's womb, but he gave Leah children. And so God saw how Leah was being oppressed. He saw how Leah was the unfavored one, and God still blessed her. And so I'm just here to tell you that even those of us who are minority, who are women, who feel like after the vote last night that this country is not favoring us. We feel oppressed. We feel cast aside. Just like to know that God has not forgot. And even though there might be people who may seem to oppress us, they might have things that might happen, they may seem unfavorable to us, that God will show us favor. That when other people and when this world don't take care of minorities, when they favor the elite and they favor other people in power, God always takes care of his people. So like I said in the post, be not dismayed, be encouraged that God takes care of his people. God takes care of those who are oppressed. God takes care of those people who are left out or who are looked over. And I just believe that, just like in the past, God can use an evil leader. God can use a leader that oppresses the minorities, oppresses people, and he can use them to protect those very people and bless those very people that others might want to oppress and look over. And so I just want to encourage you that God is still in control, and just pray for our leaders, pray for our country, pray for God to turn hearts, pray for God to bring unity to this country. Because despite how we might feel about the candidate, we all have to come together, because a house divided cannot stand. And so we need to come together in unity, we need to come together in prayer, and we need to come together and just trust in God that he knows what is best, and he will take care of his people. Be blessed, y'all. Have a blessed day.